Good morrow to you, fine sir or madam, and welcome to the SitRep for today, the 26th of November, 2022. Let me just adjust the camera there for y'all on Instagram. Welcome if you're joining me from Instagram. Also, welcome if you're joining me from the YouTubes. Also, welcome if you happen to be listening to this in the audio version on a podcast, which I know some of you want to do. You enjoy, for some reason, listening to my voice and not seeing my face. Can't imagine why. No, being facetious, of course. If you don't want to look at my face, my furry looking face, you don't have to. But very glad you're here, wherever you're listening to this. This is the SitRep. It is a Saturday where I'm at. In the future, for some of you who are listening in the Northern Hemisphere in the time zones way back when, it's going to be the 25th, which is Black Friday, I think. So get yourself some deals, right? In all seriousness, though, I'm not a big advocate of Black Friday and deals and all that sort of shit, but it is a good opportunity for you to stock up on some really good prepping gear right now if you happen to have the means and the inclination to do so. So maybe go and do that. All right, so SitRep Situation Report. This is where I go through news stories that I've found over the past 24 hours or the people have sent into me and have a look at it from the perspective of prepping. Yesterday, a lot of it was taken up by this tale of woe from somebody who lives in Kyiv, a city dweller in Kyiv. And they're having some issues at the moment, especially around power. Part two is today. That person is tweeting out a what do you call it on Twitter? A feed, a list of many tweets, a Twitterthon. I don't know what you call it, but anyway, they're doing it. They're putting this constant stream of consciousness out onto the Twitterverse. And we get to look at it, we get to read it, and we get to go, hey, here's some interesting stuff that we can all learn from. Today is part two because this person has been at it again. And so my main source on Instagram has very kindly been sending this through to me. He's compiled it together and said, here it is. Read this out for the people. Update. There are some other stories too that I will talk about after this. So if you don't want to listen to what's going on in Kyiv and learn some stuff, then skip forward. If you don't want to learn anything else about what's going on in the world, just listen to this part. All right, let's jump into it. Updates from Kyiv. Good evening, blackout day 2. In the morning, I said I was not worried about heating. That was one of the things that he said. He said, like, the heat is fine. Like, as long as we keep the doors closed, everything's cool. And as long as it doesn't get below minus 10 degrees centigrade, we'll be fine, which I think is 17 Fahrenheit off memory. So yeah, I said I wasn't worried about heating. Instead, I was concerned about water and sanitation. Boy, I was wrong. The water is back and toilets are working, while my apartment is cold. Apparently he's got a picture of somebody who's happy. I'm assuming maybe his wife or partner or something, who's happy that the water is back. Also got a picture of his dinner. No electricity means no warm food for me. So it is veggies, canned tuna, and cheese. I actually read that and I was like, oh, woe is you. Like, I mean, I'm probably going to eat that on a given lunch day for lunch anyway. So that's not the worst thing in the world, really. But it kind of shows you that how we are as a society. This is in a relatively developed country, Ukraine, in the capital city, how used to comfort we get. I was going to say the word soft, and I think that offends some people when they get called soft. But in reality, we are quite soft. And I'm lumping myself in there as well. Like, I am quite soft. I love the trappings of the modern world. I love comfort. We seek comfort as human beings, and we're trying to normalize that whenever we can. And so then when it's taken away from us, we feel it. And this is one of the things, eating cold meals. I mean, spending years and years in the military, spending many more years bouncing around the world into disaster zones and such what, like I've eaten many a cold meal in my time. So it's not something that is totally outside the realm of possibility for me. But if you don't regularly eat cold meals, or you're used to just hot meals all the time, then it could be quite dramatic for you. I was about to say traumatic, and I'm like, it's not really trauma. It's more drama. Anyway, cold food, water's back on. In the morning, my wife made us guacamole and chips. Someone at the office managed to order pizza for lunch. Miracle, I ate several cold pieces. So, I mean, this is an interesting picture that this person's actually painting here, or at least this is the way I'm reading. I'm going, wow, this is quite fascinating information. Guacamole, for anyone in kind of Western developed world, especially like US, I think UK, Australia, guacamole or smashed avocado, it's known as something that is relatively expensive when you're buying it. So, and access to avocados, you're not going to get access to avocados everywhere in the world. Avocados have to usually be shipped into certain countries. So they've still got this, and it's something that I was talking about yesterday. They've still got access to some things like telecommunications, internet, stuff to power their phones. They don't have access to water and the ability to flush toilets. So it's this real disparity that's going on there, and it's a really interesting picture that they're painting here. And somebody got pizza as well. So there's pizza being made around the place. This doesn't surprise me overly, though. I've been in war zones and had freshly cooked bread. These things that still work, this continuancy of normal life, the way it actually manifests always fascinates me. The things that we kind of put priority on or have the ability to continue doing, and then the things that we can't. So it's like, oh, we've got no ability to actually do any medical aid on anyone, but we can cook a pizza. Fascinating stuff. He goes on to say, it is very dark in underground garages, spooky or freaky, your choice. Here's a video. He's got a video on there of him and his wife trying to find their car in an underground garage, which is obviously very, very dark. So they're scrambling around in the dark. They're trying to use lights and like off their phones and things like that. Again, a little reminder to people for blackouts, backup torches and things. We all rely on our phone. I was about to grab my phone and I realized it's just here like recording me. We always think about, light. Yeah, I've always got light on me on my phone. And yes, we do, but it's always good to have that backup light. So, there's little sort of pen torches that you can put in your pocket, bigger torches that you can put into a bag, head torches. I always carry a head torch in my bag as part of my EDC. These sorts of things really work, or massive bulky torches like this lead lenser one with its power pack on it. This sort of stuff. Really good things to have on you. Doesn't cost that much. I mean, that one there does cost a lot of money, but your normal little head torches that you can get from anywhere generally don't cost too much. Also wanted you to get a feel of how normal the city looks. So I asked my wife to record our drive from home to work, and I learned the drive takes under 2 minutes to get to work. So, like, again, that normalcy that's actually going on there. He's illustrating like, hey, things are normal, but things are also not normal. Just breaking out of that mindset where we watch the movies, something goes wrong and everything goes wrong. That's not my experience of how things have usually gone in disasters or whatever it is. There are things that always are there, that always work. And I always find it interesting. And it's usually a different thing as well. Like I went up to the floods, after the floods up in the Northern Rivers, looking at Lismore, which looked, honestly, to me, I had been in war zones that looked much better than Lismore did at that point. Like, that place was utterly destroyed. Cars on their roofs, buildings destroyed, refuse and junk everywhere, dehomed people just wandering around with glazed looks in their eyes. People were struggling to get food at that point. I could always get some petrol, though. That spun me out at the time. I was like, I can fill up with diesel anywhere at that point when I got up there. Because I came up with heaps of diesel and I was like, I'm going to have to, pass this out and use some for myself. Never had to. There was plenty around for some reason. So there's always things that are there. And I just wanted to illustrate that. I'll continue on. At work, the generator went off. It just can't keep up with demand. All right, that's really fascinating to me. Because we kind of think about these sorts of things, and I am as prone to this as anyone, going, "Oh, I've got that. It's sorted." I always say, test your preps, test these things out. Have these, if you do get a blackout, I use those opportunities to actually test out my preps. If I go camping, I take the things that are my emergency, in case of emergency break glass type stuff, and I use it. A, so I know how to use it. B, so I know what its capabilities actually are. I know how much energy I'm going to get out of a generator, out of a solar generator. I know how long it's going to last if I don't recharge it. So, and I know how long my petrol generator is going to last with the amount of fuel based on how much I'm going to be pulling from it. So this is the thing, if you think that, I've got a generator, so I'm sorted, everything's fine, everything's cool, no worries. Think again, like really think about that, because generators just don't last forever. They're not magic machines that continue forging ahead and just do their thing. They require inputs and they require maintenance as well. And it depends greatly on what is being asked of them. So he very specifically says it just can't keep up with demand. So really, really interesting stuff there. This cracked me up. We had to cut off. So think about this: your generator's gone down. What are you running off it? What really important things are you running off it? We had to cut off the coffee machine and a bunch of machines from the power grid. If you've ever listened to me before, you know where my priorities are, where they lie when it comes to coffee. And I'm like, yeah, 100%. Like, I would have a coffee machine running if I had the opportunity as well. So I'm not blaming anyone for that. I'm not putting anyone down for that. And I'm kind of thinking that's a bit sad that you had to cut that off. There's an undercurrent in all of this that I want you to try and pick up on as I'm reading, of morale. Think about what this is doing to an individual's morale. Coffee, if you're a coffee addict like I am and you get no coffee, you can imagine where my morale is going. But it is not a robust solution. So we must order some powerful generators or risk losing our heating. But it is impossible. There is simply no generators on the market, not even in Poland. Surge demand. More bad news continued to arrive. It is also impossible to order home batteries, i.e. like Tesla, to save electricity when it is available. So yesterday, in part one of this, he was talking about, right, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to get some Tesla. I'm going to get some sort of power backup for my home, because I can see how vulnerable we are right now. Well, he's obviously done the research. He's looked into it and gone, I can't do that. I can't even do that. This is such a huge lesson for us all right now. What I like to say something around this. It's kind of like a saying I've got, but it's not really a saying. It's just a piece of information I like to put out on all courses that I do. Learning to tie your shoelaces while you're getting shot at is a really, really bad time to do it. So don't wait until you're getting shot at to learn something like tying your shoelaces, where you can do that beforehand. What I'm trying to illustrate there is do everything you can before it happens. Another way, or another saying of this is, fix your roof while the sun shines, which is a hard thing to do. When the sun is shining, this is quite apt for where I live, actually, because everyone just got flooded with the storm we just had 2 days ago, and we're about to have another one tonight. And everyone got flooded, and everyone was like, well, when we built this place 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, we were in drought. So we never thought of anything to do with water management. And now we get flooded every time it rains. When it's sunny, you do not notice holes in the roof. When it's raining is when you notice holes in the roof. But when's a good time to repair a hole in the roof? When it's sunny or when it's raining? Well, I would suggest it's probably when it's sunny is the best time to repair that hole in the roof. So we really need to look at what's there, what's not there, what we are missing within our preps, and go, okay, if the sun is shining now, i.e. I have access to things like Tesla batteries or even just home setups. I was showing someone my home setup yesterday, which is just lithium 12-volt batteries in series and an inverter. That's simple. That's not going to break the bank. That's like, maybe you can get a setup like that for, I want to say, $500, $800, or something like that. Whereas Tesla, you're going into the thousands of dollars. You can do this. You can do some sort of budget version and get this sorted now, today. It's too late when the power grid's gone down, and it's too late when there's going to be an extended power grid outage, because everyone else would have bought up that stuff. They're not there to actually buy. So it's really, really super important lesson that I wanted to illustrate there from what this guy is saying. Can't even buy the batteries now. Can't buy generators at the moment where he is. Think like 2020, toilet paper crisis, that it's a very normal thing for humans to do. You go, oh shit, there's some sort of thing. We're running out of electricity. I'm going to go buy everything to do with electricity. Same thing we saw in and around Germany, where they are looking at a cold winter and they said, oh shit, we're not going to get gas. And they suddenly, all of a sudden, the price of firewood skyrocketed. The ability to buy anything that could contain a fire within a house evaporated as everyone rushed into the market and bought those things. All right, so he goes on here to talk about students who are studying without lights. The vibe I've got is, he was talking about universities yesterday on part one. So I think he actually works at the university. That's why universities was in there, because I was like, universities? Who gives a shit about universities? That's the last thing I want running. But I think that's important to him because that's where he works. Okay, now this is really interesting. Water was a problem for most of the day. There were heated discussions about whether it is okay to use drinking water to flush toilets. Remember, I talked about that yesterday. He said, well, we got 100 liters of water, but the problem is we can't flush the toilets. And I said, this is a real issue. How do you weigh this up? Because it's going to be, do we have drinking water or the hygiene of being able to flush a toilet? So it's really something that needs some thought into it. And as I said, and Peter Rouse came on and commented on this, that you should plan around 10 liters of water per day per person. Quite often you'll hear the 3 liters per person per day. Good working kind of average of how much water a human being's going to use. But that doesn't really take in hygiene as a whole. So really need to think about that hygiene as well. All of a sudden that jumps out. If you're washing hands, if you're taking showers, if you are flushing toilets, if you're washing dishes, if you're washing clothes, 10 liters might even be on the skinny side right now. So he was saying here, water was a problem, heated discussions about drinking water or to flush toilet. Some gathered snow, but it turns out it takes ages to melt. By the end of the day, the water was back, and we bought canisters to save it. So the water came back on by the end of the day yesterday. So they went and bought canisters to try and save that water. Stores are still working, so you can still buy stuff. Some are in darkness and closed until you knock. Just thought there's an interesting, again, illustration of the picture that you're seeing. Imagine going to the local store and it's all closed up and you're knocking on the door, and then somebody comes up and they're like, yeah, what do you want? And you're like, oh, can I come in and buy some stuff? And they're like, yep, okay, in you come. Here's how it works. Here is how it works at a small grocery store next to our building. He doesn't really then go on to talk about that. But, he's basically illustrating that he has to go and knock on the door in order to get into the store next to him. My conclusion at the end of the day, things are going to be tough, but we can function. I just want to repeat that. He actually said things are going to be thought, but English is not his first language, so I'm figuring out what he's talking about here. So his conclusion at the end of the day, things are going to be tough, but we can function. So again, that's what I'm talking about. Things can function. Things can still work. There is still some semblance of normalcy that continues on, even in a disaster, in a country that's at war, in a city that has no power. But it is going to be tough. And that's really what, as preppers, we're trying to concern ourselves with, is like, how tough do things get? How tough do they need to get? First off, I want to survive. Second off, I want to lessen that toughness. Third, I want to try and continue my life in whatever level of comfort I feel okay with doing. So that's what he's talking about there, that it's going to be tough. They realize that they're going to have to just push through, but things are still kind of working there. We need to order a bunch of things from Europe and somehow get by until they arrive. Really interesting list here. I might make a little reel out of this at some stage. Generators, gas ovens, water canisters, batteries, some food, some clothing, Starlinks. So just to put that in kind of some sort of priority order, water canisters, water, I would say that's probably up there. Clothing and maybe not gas ovens, but generators for heat and shelter, keeping yourself warm. It's obviously a very cold place. Totally agree with that. Generators and batteries for powering things. Some food. He doesn't really seem that focused on food, to be honest, and it seems like they've got okay access to food, but you can always pad that out a little bit and make your life a little bit better there. And communications, Starlink, really interesting stuff. Gas ovens too, cooking food is another one, but yeah, Starlink or some form of communications, backup communication. So it's a really interesting list that I thought he put out there. Also, he's just reiterating this point. Also, I regretted a hesitation about buying Tesla-like batteries when it was available. Okay, I am a survival nerd. I do read a lot of literature around survival situations, case studies, after-action reviews, police interview reports, all that sort of stuff. Novels on survival scenarios and things like that. And I'm always fascinated by the similarity in comments that you'll see. This is definitely one of the themes that you always see in these kind of survival situations. Not always, but like in a lot of them. I regret that I didn't do this. I had thought about that, but I didn't practice it, or I didn't buy that thing, or I didn't embody that, whatever it was. And perfect example here. Had the ability, clearly had the means to do it, and just said, I'm not going to. That's why I kind of at the start of today was like, just give you that little bit of a reminder that it is Black Friday and all those fucking sales and useless shit that you can buy, but you can also buy some really good stuff today that's going a bit cheaper. So have a look around. If there is something that you've been kind of like, I don't know if I'll get this. I mean, don't go buy useless stuff, and certainly I wouldn't recommend to people going and buying things that are not going to benefit your life unless there is an emergency. That's maybe not the best way to think about it, but something like a Tesla battery or a home power solution, that's going to benefit you, I believe, regardless of what happens in the world. He says here, I was worried about the cost and installation, etc. It is all irrelevant when you have blackouts and no heating. So there you go. If you're umming and ahhing about like that purchase right now, or even better than purchase, I'll put this. If you're umming and ahhing about the time that you're going to have to allocate to do something, time and or money, the resources that you have to do something, take heed of this warning here. It is all irrelevant when you have blackouts and no heating. There you go. I mean, that's not really an issue if you live in Australia and or maybe New Zealand, but not so much large parts of Australia where it doesn't get so cold. It gets cold where I am, so heating is certainly something, and I've certainly got solutions around that. But these are the sorts of things that you probably want to think about. All right, P.S. This is an interesting part. He wakes up at 1:30 in the morning. The electricity is back. It is 1:30 a.m., 32 hours after the first attack. Hot tea. Something I have always taken for granted is now a treasure. But will I be able to charge my phone and computers before it is off again? Will the building heating be back even for just a bit? I hope so. Super interesting stuff there. There was one more that I'm missing. I think I went on to actually went and downloaded Twitter and jumped on and checked out his stuff. I caved, yeah. But yeah, super interesting stuff there. I know exactly, that was visceral for me when he explained hot tea. I've been there both by choice and not by choice, where I've been deprived of things. I've been, in this kind of situation where I'm lacking stuff. I'm stuck out in kind of survival mode. I've done things like Vision Quest, going out and sitting in the bush for 4 days, 4 nights without any food. And it really teaches you what is valuable to you. Where you're sitting out there and you're like, I don't have this thing. I don't have access to any of this thing, any of these sorts of things right now. And you're like, after 3 or 4 days, you're like, man, I really miss this. Or you forget about it, and then you get it the first time, like come back and you have a tea or a coffee or something, you're like, oh, holiest of holy. It really teaches you what's important and what kind of gets you going, what your motivations are, what is that mindset for you, what is that key thing that's going to drive you, which is super, super important. Hot tea at 1:30 in the morning. Again, I want to point out the undercurrent of this entire thing. Things were so bad, and he was getting to this point where, when I was reading it there, and he starts talking about, I wish I had bought this Tesla battery. Like, he's going into that stage of regret. Like, he's like, oh, woe is me. Like, why didn't we do this when we had the chance? Like, this is bad. And then hot tea, like, there's exclamation marks. He's like, hot tea. I never thought something was so fucking brilliant. I love tea. So you can see the boost in morale from just such a simple thing like hot tea. So think about that as well. Some of my, like, heaps of my backups are my camping sort of stuff. So I've got like the butane gas stove, and I've got LPG stoves, and I've got wood fire stoves and things like that, because I know the morale boost that is contained within a hot cup of whatever. For me, it's a hot, maybe a chocolate or definitely a coffee, but I know I have felt this many times in my life where I've been down, it's been shitty, been on very little food for days on end, very little sleep. It's raining, I'm wet, cold, I'm miserable, everything's chafed, everything's hurt. And you have that hot drink and you're like, everything's going to be okay. So yeah, I just want to point that out today. That morale aspect to this is a huge thing. And it's definitely not something that we should sideline. It's not something you should go, oh, well, yeah, morale's one thing, but, I just need to survive. I see that a lot within kind of the prepper community. We're like, well, that's not going to keep you fucking alive. It's like, yeah, no, it's not going to keep me alive. It's going to keep me happy, though. Don't you want to be happy? Don't you want to be more than just alive? I certainly do. Like I said, the first priority is to stay alive. But I don't just end it there. I don't just go like, well, I'm alive now, so that's it. Part of my preps are morale things. That part of my preps are hygiene things. Warm clothing that does more than just keep me alive. It makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel that feeling of when you put a warm thing on in the cold and you're like, oh, everything's going to be okay. Even to the point of me personally, like stocking up on things like board games and cards and learning how to play different card games and all that sort of stuff. These sorts of things are very important, I think. Like, just throw a little bit of your brain space over to the morale side of prepping as well today. All right, so that's the day, or the part 2 from the dude in Kyiv on the ground there. Again, I find this stuff super, super fascinating. Usually I'm reading this sort of stuff in retrospect. Like, I'm reading stuff from people who are like, in a survival situation, but they're back and they're okay now. They're reflecting on it. But this is like stream of consciousness sort of stuff. So it's super valuable to me that we've got people doing this sort of stuff. And I know this person would never listen to me. I don't know what they're doing. They're probably much more important things than listening to some bearded Aussie talk about prepping right now. But I just really want to throw out my thoughts and feelings and prayers to this person to say thank you for putting this information out there, because it helps me, and hopefully it helps you too. It helps all of our community become better, safer, more self-reliant human beings. And that's what this is all about. All right. What other stories we got here? I don't know if I'll talk about other stories, actually. I might just cut it there. Oh, wait, here's an extra part. Ooh, almost got by me. Yes, he's continued on. Oh, wow. Day 3. All right. Here we go again. Good morning. Day 3 of Kyiv blackout. I woke up cold. Not a good way to be. The heating and electricity are off. So the night before, he said the power came on at 1:30. He hopes the heating will come on. It's not here. He's cold. Water is there, but it might not last. Another attack or just too much pressure on the system. He's not sure. So yesterday, after the water came back, we filled every bottle and bucket. Remember, he said he went out and bought heaps of containers and canisters for it. So they filled everything. We have been saving large plastic bottles since October 10 when infrastructure attacks started. I estimate we have about 120 to 150 liters. As far as I know, there's only 2 human beings. I don't know. We've had some sort of interruption in our regular viewing.